What's going on, guys? My name is Wade with TechDaily, and in this video, we are going to be comparing the new Samsung Galaxy S24 FE to last year's S23 FE. Now, I actually think a comparison video like this is helpful for two reasons. One, if you were one of the very few people who did buy an S23 FE, you'll be able to see what, if anything, was upgraded or changed, and you can decide if you want to make the switch to this new FE. But beyond that, I think it's more likely that most of you guys have something else besides these two phones, like an older S20 FE or some A-series phone, and you're probably deciding if it's worth getting last year's FE at a discount or just going all in and buying the latest and greatest, so that you maybe don't have to buy another new phone for a few more years. And I will say that, honestly, there's probably enough random differences between these two phones, besides just the price, that might be a deciding factor one way or another. The main thing I do want to say up front, though, is that just like most other smartphones nowadays, the new S24 FE probably isn't as significant of an upgrade to outright justify buying it. It's more so that the phone is just different. And the differences are maybe more subjective than anything else, just based on your personal smartphone preferences. Now, I want to actually get the price thing out of the way first, because let's be honest, that's probably the first thing you're going to compare anyway. And there's obviously some additional factors to consider with that. The new S24 FE is basically just one price right now, $650 unlocked for the 128GB model, or about $710 if you want to double that storage. Samsung actually still is offering elevated trade-in prices for every phone you can think of. So if you do have a device you can trade in towards the S24 FE, that's probably the best thing you can do to get a good deal right now. I mean, getting $300 for an S21 is practically free money. Obviously, plenty of carriers are also offering different deals and discounts for the new FE if you add a new line or switch to their carrier, but those are very customer and situation dependent. The S23 FE, being a year old now, and honestly a pretty unpopular phone, means you can get it for way cheaper than its original launch price. To be totally fair, Samsung is actually still selling the S23 FE for $630 for the 128GB configuration, or $690 for 256, but please don't buy it there. Amazon has it listed directly from Samsung, new in the box, for $472. Or if you're okay with a renewed device, Amazon's gently used and refurbished program, you can snag it for $320 in excellent condition. Samsung phones, unfortunately, just suffer from a steep depreciation curve, and this is a prime example of that. The S23 FE is hundreds of dollars cheaper after barely 1 year, and I always say that getting last year's phone, whatever it is always the best deal. Just keep in mind that this new S24 FE will inevitably suffer the same fate, so assume a year from now, this phone will also be $300 or $400. Now, one of the most interesting things about the new S24 FE, I think, is that Samsung made the phone bigger. The S23 FE was already kind of big at 6.4 inches, but the new FE adds a bit more height and width to make it a decisively large 6.7 inches. That's as big as the S24 Plus now, which, on the one hand, if you like a big phone, this is about as big as you can get without going ultra. But I've seen plenty of comments from the other side saying that they didn't want anything bigger this year. I mean, the only small phone in Samsung's entire lineup, A series, S series, F series, M series, it's the regular flagship S24. So I can see the argument, but evidently, big, huge phones are what Samsung thinks everyone wants now. The overall design and build of both phones is super similar. Samsung mimicked the design language they've used on their flagship phones the last couple of years, and I always say that if you're self-conscious about getting the cheaper Samsung, literally no one is gonna know. The front and back glass on the new FE is the better Gorilla Glass Victus Plus, which is nice, an upgrade over the Gorilla Glass 5 from last year, and the aluminum frame is slightly less rounded too, and less bulbous than last year. It's totally flat. But besides that, the phones look and feel like any other Samsung smartphone from the last few years. Taking a quick look around at everything else, nothing really on the left side besides a 5G antenna. On the right, pretty much identical power and volume buttons. Up at the top, there appears to be an extra mic hole on the new FE alongside the SIM card tray. Here in the US at least, these phones are single physical SIM with eSIM support and no micro SD card support for either one. I also personally feel that the 120 gigabytes of storage really isn't enough nowadays, but Samsung has to try and sell you some cloud storage subscription one way or another, right? At the bottom, there's a slight redesign to the speaker grille alongside the USB-C charging port and a big old empty space next to that. The selfie camera, I guess, looks a tiny bit larger on the new phone too, which is interesting. And around back, very similar triple lens camera setups. Both phones have in-display fingerprint sensors. Still not the flagship ultrasonic ones though, but they seem to wake and unlock at the exact same time every time. Oddly enough, with Face Unlock, the new FE is almost always first to bring me to the home screen, but I can't imagine that's a deciding factor. So aside from the screen sizes being different, there's really not much else that's new and improved when it comes to the viewing experience on the S24 FE, besides one other small thing. This new phone can get brighter. It peaks at around 1900 nits now versus 1450 nits on last year's FE. And you'll notice that most with auto brightness enabled and when you're using the phone in very bright environments, like outside in direct sunlight. Now, this isn't a change I can really scoff at. I think it's a very practical and useful upgrade that makes daily usability better on the new FE. But besides that, you aren't getting a noticeably better screen in any other way, either visually nor on the spec sheet. Both phones are still 1080p resolution. That's perfectly fine, honestly. The new FE is still plenty sharp, even with its increase in size and slightly lower pixel density. They're both still dynamic AMOLED 2X panels that offer very rich and vibrant colors, no matter what it is you're viewing, and some color calibration and customization options can be found in settings to get the screen looking precisely how you want it. And they're both still 120Hz screens that deliver that fast and fluid feel and smooth visual that's been a must-have feature now for a number of years. I feel like at this point, the display is the baseline screen spec that Samsung has used and will continue to use for at least a few more years. I mean, they need to reserve a higher resolution for the S24 Plus and the Ultras, I guess. They're still keeping some elements, like a better AMOLED display for those flagships too. I don't really know what more they could add to the displays on these non-flagship phones that wouldn't overlap with their high-end devices, so I don't have any complaints or suggestions per se. I would just stress that the viewing experience on the new FE and last year's FE, and even the higher tier A series phones, by the way, and honestly most other $400 to $700 Android phones, it's all pretty much the same now. One weird thing that I think is different between these two phones is the speaker sound. I don't have any clue why. I don't think the change in speaker grille design has anything to do with it, and I don't know of any hardware changes with the speaker setup on the new FE, but for whatever reason, my S24 FE sounds more muffled and echoey compared to the S23 FE, especially at max volume. And it's a little hard to hear over my camera, of course, but see if you can hear a difference yourself. One of the more controversial changes to the new S24 FE this year was Samsung's decision to use their own Exynos processor in it, both here in the US and around the world. Last year, the S23 FE was powered by either the Exynos 2200 if you lived somewhere else, or the fan favorite Snapdragon 8 Gen 1 if you were here in the States. This year, the new FE got Samsung's brand new Exynos 2400E chipset, along with the same 8 gigabytes of RAM from last year. So with that, I will say up front that this new Samsung processor is definitely an upgrade over last year, if you judge it based solely on the performance scores. I mean, this new chip puts some solid numbers up, especially when you consider that it isn't Samsung's highest tier phone technically. The thing people are quick to point out though is that the numbers don't always tell the whole tale. And when it comes to the real-world, day-to-day user experience, Exynos processors still have a hard time shaking off their bad reputation of being less optimized and often running too hot, to a point where performance is negatively impacted. Also, I know this speed test is less than scientific, but if you're just like an average person jumping from social media app to social media app, browsing the web, texting your friends, and snapping some pictures, I truly don't think you're going to be wowed by any noticeable speed improvement. I mean, it's probably been 2 or 3 years at least since side-by-side speed tests actually mattered. I think if you're a power user though, someone who spends a lot of time gaming, for example, or pushing their phone really hard each day, you might understandably be wary about another Exynos chip. Fortunately, I and a lot of other people who have the new FE have experienced solid performance so far. And I can't even believe how many people have actually been defending the new Exynos processor as an innovative SoC with better architecture and higher overall performance capabilities, actually decent optimization, perhaps. I'm sure there's more than a few reasons why Samsung chose their new Exynos chip for this S24 FE. Perhaps it saved them a bit of money to allow this phone to be slightly cheaper than a flagship. I'm sure they're already multiple years deep into their Exynos roadmap anyway, and have the R&D pipeline that's going to continue spitting out these chips no matter what. And I also think Samsung probably wants to continue integrating their own Galaxy AI software to their own hardware, to tout the on-device AI capabilities and software experience that other companies are pairing to their own hardware and components. Galaxy AI, by the way, is like 90% of what's new on the new FE as far as Samsung is concerned, but don't be fooled. The S23 FE already has the Galaxy AI and One UI software updates, so it's the exact same experience and feature set. You might experience more of a performance difference here with AI tasks processing on the new FE. I mean, the more complex the action, the more the new processor is probably going to shine, but everything listed on Samsung's website that's an S24 FE AI or software feature, you'll see on last year's phone at this point, and plenty of other Samsung devices now too, so just keep that in mind. All in all, I'll be interested to see in the long term if the new Exynos 2400E maybe shakes off some of the sour thoughts towards Samsung's chips. I mean, it feels like things are headed in a solid direction, but I suppose there are still plenty of anti-Exynos people out there who won't be bothering with this phone no matter what. Also, inside these phones is a pretty similar sized battery. The larger S24 FE has a 4700 milliamp capacity battery. The S23 FE had a 4500 milliamp capacity battery. I really wouldn't call that an upgrade though. I mean, you've got the bigger display on the new phone. It can run at a higher brightness. The processor is more powerful. If you're really into AI, that'll suck some more power throughout the day, and maybe you didn't utilize that as much in the past. So I don't see any real difference either way with longevity. And as far as the charging speeds, it's the same across the board. 25 watt wired, 15 watt wireless, and reverse wireless charging all remain the same. Finally, when it comes to the camera setups and shooting capabilities, I'm not 100% sure why, but Samsung seems to have slightly altered the hardware from last year just enough where the spec sheet geeks are going to call out a difference, but most everyone else is going to see the main camera specs and say that nothing has changed. The primary camera on both phones is a 50 megapixel lens. The new S24 FE just has a slightly different focal length. The 8 megapixel telephoto lens, again, seems to be the same on both phones, but it's a 75mm on the new phone versus a 74mm on the S23 FE. The ultra-wide lens on both phones seems to be the exact same everything. 8 megapixel, 3x optical zoom, 123 degrees wide. And again, while the selfie cameras are both 10 megapixel lenses, the focal lengths are different by 1mm, and I truly have no idea why. Samsung didn't add anything new or different to the S24 FE, which I don't think is a huge surprise because they still want to keep the flagships and the ultras as the ultimate camera setups in their lineup. But it is a little surprising, I guess, when camera tech seems to still be all these companies are focused on. That's not to say that the pictures don't look a little different between the two phones though, and I want to make sure I say this right. The pictures look different, not better or worse in any way, just different. And different in so much that with some tweaks to the exposure levels or saturation, they both could ultimately look identical. The default straight out of your pocket to the camera app shooting mode on last year's S23 FE on the left seems to give you a slightly brighter image exposure-wise. I mean, the shadows are just gone in every shot, but perhaps that's an artificial boost. And maybe in a similar way to how the S24 FE on the right increases the color of nearly every shot. I mean, some of these pictures remind me of the oversaturated Samsung pics from 4 or 5 years ago. Sure, the newer, more powerful Exynos processor on the S24 FE might be able to also do more on the back end to enhance detail, automatically adjust exposure, or produce an image after the fact that looks better, or that can be edited better by capturing more in every image. But there's truly nothing here with the S24 FE, I think, that is outright better camera-wise. Like, you aren't getting better hardware, there's no new features or shooting modes to utilize. It's still a few steps behind the flagships, and I almost feel like we're at a point now where the camera setups and actual images and videos are, like I said, just different from the prior year. Not better, but different enough so that you at least know you kind of have a different phone. Now, for me personally, I really have a hard time justifying the new S24 FE, whether I had last year's S23 FE or any older Android smartphone. I understand it's great to get the latest device, especially one with a brand new processor, an additional year or two of software updates, but I don't think the new S24 FE has enough that makes it worth paying hundreds of dollars more over last year's S23 FE at this point. I mean, I guess if you get a good trade-in deal, go for it. For $400 out of pocket, after a trade-in, it's not terrible, but you can get the S23 FE for $400 or even cheaper now. That's a great deal to me. And the biggest thing you gain in going with that is a lot of extra dollars in your pocket. That's gotta feel better than spending more on a slightly bigger phone that maybe has a better processor you'll use some of the time, and really not anything more than that. But what do you guys think? Is the S24 FE worth getting at all? Did I maybe miss something big with this comparison? Let me know in the comments down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts, of course. Hopefully you guys did enjoy this video though. Be sure to follow TechDaily on Twitter and subscribe to the TechDaily YouTube channel if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys later.